shows and stuff. And then a few of us got together and said, let's open an alternative space, and we opened 500X. It was actually called 500 Gallery or something back then.
Right.
So we started that, we built it and started that as a gallery. Alternative space where you could do anything you wanted, you know.
Right.
And when we opened it at the time, we were sort of like the, what's the politically correct way to put this? We were kind of the odd one out or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like, well, you know, it's not really a gallery. You know, everybody pays dues, so they're sort of like paying their dues, and then they're putting their own artwork up. So, you know, it's kind of like this vanity thing, you know. And might have been, but what else? There's no other place to show your work. There weren't galleries in Dallas snooping around trying to find you. There was like 500X. There was, I can't even name Courtney Sale maybe was still open then. Janie was gone. There weren't really that many commercial galleries around. DW Co-op was the other one, you know, which was a co-op, so it wasn't really a commercial. I mean, it became a commercial gallery, I guess. But I just did it because I was dying to do bigger sort of installation kind of work or very minimal kind of things, and doing like stuff I'd been experimenting with in a room to do it there, you know. Take that whole downstairs area and do something with it, that pit area, and it was like, God, it was great, you know. And you could do whatever you wanted. I mean, you could make a total fool of yourself if you wanted to, you know. I didn't especially want to do that, but I mean, you could, and it was all right, you know.
Right.
Not that they tried to have foolish things, but you know, you could go there and fail basically, and it was, if you failed, you know, maybe you learned something from it, you know. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sell anything, and the whole selling artwork to me had nothing to do with anything at that point in my career, you know. It was like, just make these things happen, you know.
Were you able to do art full time at that point, or did you have a straight gig?
Oh God, no. No, God, I was oh shit, no. My father and uncle had a thing called Orr Wrecking Company, which was always there, and they wrecked houses, and they took all the materials, and they had a wonderful salvage yard, and I could always work there. They paid absolutely nothing. You know?
Would they give you a deal on materials?
Oh yeah.
5-finger discount?
Well, it was sort of like, I need to take this home with me to do so. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Right.
But, you know, I couldn't make a living working there because it just, you know, they didn't pay enough. And they couldn't pay me anymore because I was part of the family. That was their rule. So I'd always work for them, or I'd take a carpentry job. And, you know, and then I also had a job as a caterer to make ends meet. It was, you know, and again, it wasn't like I was trying to make money off my artwork, because I thought that was pointless. Who's going to buy some scrim with lines painted on it? I mean, you had to be logical about it back then. Maybe they still won't buy that, but I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So to do that, I worked 2 to 3 jobs, which I wasn't the only one. A lot of other people did too. Yeah.
So when did things change?
You ready for all this?
I've got time.
Okay. That was 500, and that was a great thing for me. You know, of course, as a young guy, I want things to happen a little faster. So what the hell's going on? What am I going to do? Well, so this isn't working. So a friend of mine, we opened a restaurant in Georgia. So I left Dallas at that point. Boom. I moved to Georgia to open.
There was an unexpected turn in the story that I wasn't.
It'll go quickly from here.
You know, your wife's story had an unexpected turn to Georgia.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So this is a painter in Dallas. His ex-wife and I had a relationship for a while. Her brother bankrolled this restaurant in St. Simon's Island, Georgia. I had worked for a caterer, so I could cook, and so she said, "Come on, we'll do this," you know. And so I went to Georgia for 3 years and left what career I had in Dallas, as you know, small as it was. Left that and said, "I go to Georgia." So I went to Georgia and did it for 3 years, and the restaurant business is not for me. I mean, it's like the most grueling work you can imagine. No time to even think about artwork. So it was like, after 2 years, I said, "Hell with this! I cannot do this because I can't even think about art." You know. And the restaurant was a success. I mean, it was going over pretty good. And then the relationship fell apart, and I thought, "Oh God, what am I doing?" And so I moved back to Dallas, thinking, "Okay, I'll just start my career right back up where I left off." Well, that's a joke. I get back to Dallas and I see the few people I know, and I said, "What's going on?" And all this stuff was happening. I go, "Great," And so I went to a person I sort of knew, the director of DW Co-op, and she was at some other gallery then, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" She goes, "Hi," and she didn't remember me from Adam, and I said, "Well, I'm back, and I just seen what's going on." And she said, "Here," I said, "I'm Tom Orr." And she goes, "Okay, great. Well, And so immediately I realized, you've left whatever you had 3 years ago. Now you're back. You're going to have to totally start over,
Wow.
And I went, "Oh my God, okay." So that's when it really got going for me, because then I realized I'd have to start over. So I had to get like a job that paid enough money where I didn't have to work 3 jobs and do all this stuff. So I started working for a display company as a carpenter. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you one thing about me being a carpenter. I was okay, but I was certainly no skilled guy. Mm-hmm. So I get a job working for a big display house. So we're making these enormous, fancy things. And that allowed me to learn all this stuff on the job that I really needed to know for my art career. It was kind of a nice thing,
Right.
I did that. Frances and I got together at that point. We'd known each other, but we hadn't, been together. And that's when things really started going, And I think it's because I finally realized, and not that all those years were wasted, but I thought, man, if you're going to do this, do it. Don't just wave your hands and go, "Oh, I can't do this because I don't have enough money." Meh. So, like I said, I got a fairly high-paying job and building things, and spent the rest of my time trying to make art that might maybe attract someone to it, Mm-hmm. Maybe still have some of those shadows and reflections and that kind of stuff, but maybe something that might last longer than a week, or a month. Right. And that was, since I did have some better building techniques at that point, I thought, you're smart enough, you can do this. You can make something that makes that reflection over there that you could attach, that you could leave there. It'll do that all the time, not just something you crumpled up, Mm-hmm. So that made me start thinking more. And then getting together with Frances, she was real serious in teaching. Well, she wasn't. Yeah, she was still teaching then, and things just started developing at that point, Mm-hmm. And I know you asked Frances about her first public art piece, mm-hmm. And all these things didn't happen like this. I'm jumping ahead and back a little bit, but one of the big things that happened for me after I got back from all this cooking and stuff, and Frances saw this thing about a show in Japan where you could send them an image, and it was an outdoor sculpture park, and you send them one image and $200 entry fee. And I went, good God, this is like in '93 or something, and it was a lot of dough just to send for one image. She said, "You should do this." 'Cause I just made this model of a thing that looked like a boat, and it was kind of done with straight lines, and I thought it was pretty ingenious, And
was that the wooden one? Or?
Well, I did a wooden boat first, and then I did the great big gigantic one in Japan, out of steel.
Wow.
But that was I had a little maquette, which was I looked at that maquette, it's a piece of junk, but anyway, I sent that in a diagram, and I wasn't really sure how to draw this thing, but I gave it a shot, and $200, and mailed it off to Japan, and I thought, well, that's the end of that, Right. And sure enough, I get shortlisted for this pretty big sculpture show in Japan. Mm-hmm. And shortlisted means you would build they gave us, I think, $1,000 to build a model. I think it was $1,000 to build a model and a proposal for a piece that would be in this outdoor sculpture park, And I thought, well, this is pretty cool,
Right.
And I like Japan. I'd never been there, but I'd always been fascinated by Japan since I was a kid. And so, this would be great. And make a long story short, I did, through these skills I developed, I did build a kind of wonderful model, and I got it. I was accepted. I think there's something like 30 artists from all over the world. And at the time, Japan had a ton of money, so what they would do is they'd fabricate your piece. They'd give you like $50,000 to fabricate a piece.
Right.
And it was like, I think it was 50. Frances have to tell you, either 50 or 30, but at the time it was a ton of money. and they'd fabricate the piece, they'd ship it over, and then they'd fly you over business, 2 people business for this opening. I went, God, this is great.
Wow.
And the great part about this was I had so many job things that sort of worked and worked great or didn't work. I knew kind of that there's ups and downs. So when I went into this, I thought, this isn't going to be an easy thing to do, because I didn't know any fabricators that could do this stuff and anything. Well, anyway, it did work fairly smooth, and I don't want her head to swell up over here, my wife, but at that point she was saying, well, you need to do this, and she could do all this paperwork, and I think this might have even been when computers were just getting into businesses, so she was up on top of all that, and I was like, if I'd had to do all that and make these models and try to figure all this stuff out, I would have never done it,
Right.
Well, it did work out. They fabricated it. It was a wonderful piece. It's a permanent piece at this art park. We went over to Japan and had this great time and met all these Japanese artists who we're real friendly with today, a lot of them, and now we've been back to Japan so many times. That was another changing part of my career, and it was from a lot of hard work on my part and Frances's work that this thing happened, and I got another one right after that, and it was difficult, but it was sort of like I realized you can do these things. You can have other people build these gigantic things that you don't know how to do, and you don't have time to learn or the money to buy all the equipment. You can work with them, and they can do these things, and that was a big turning point for both of us, I think.
Sure. Did any of that interaction with Japan and their culture, did it wind up coming back and influencing your work in any way? Did you see?
Well, a lot of time my work, you've seen what I do, and it's fairly clean lines, and sort of simplicity is very important, and I think I always had some sort of influence from Asian work that I'd looked at early as a child and early in my life. I don't know how much it's influenced my work, but I continue to be interested in pretty much all things Asian and Japanese. We did this opera in Dallas, that's another story. But in later years, and going to Japan a lot, we've gone to theater and stuff in Japan, kabuki to start off with, because that's what every tourist goes to see. But one time I remember thinking, why in the world am I so interested in Japan and Japanese things and Asian things? And I think it's from my childhood. My folks had some sort of furniture aesthetic that was kind of along those lines, and I was also born August 6th, which is the anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been reminded of how bad that is and how bad countries can be to each other.
Yeah.
But I remember going to theater and seeing things, and I remember about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I thought, why have you always been interested in what is going on? So I started trying to read Japanese history and all this. I'm going, I'll never learn anything about this. And so I thought, well, kabuki theater, that was kind of interesting with the colors and this stuff, and very Japanese kind of. And I start reading about that, and I forget where I read it, but in some book I read that kabuki is like a Broadway play. It's for the masses. It's made to entertain and blah, blah, blah. What you really need to look into is no theater, which is more like a serious off-Broadway play or a serious opera, and it's something that you can actually study, and it is entertainment, but it's something you study. I thought, ooh, as an artist, that sounds even better.
Right.
So I started looking into that. Now I'm very interested in that, and it is the most complicated thing in the world. But this last trip to Japan, we did get to go to 4 plays, and it was just tremendous.
Sure.
And if you don't know much about it, look it up, because it is. As an artist, I think it just says so much about everything, about music, visuals, light, shadow, history. It's all there, and it's even if you can't speak the language, it's worth feeling that